As I stood beneath the Willow Creek Community Center's flashing neon sign, the rain continued to pour down a chilling mist that soaked through my coat and stuck to my skin. I held a fading patchwork quilt in my arms, its soft, worn squares forming a barrier against my chest. The quilt, which was made from my mother's wedding gown, my newborn blanket, and my father's old flannel shirt, was her final creation. It was all I had left of her, and when my world fell apart tonight, it was the only thing keeping me rooted. A fundraiser for the kids program I had created out of nothing, the center was filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses as they spilled through the broken windows. I wasn't welcomed, though. That was brutally evident from my Aunt Nora, who had reared me. An hour before, she had shouted, "Evelyn, you shouldn't be here," and dragged me into the dim corridor as her pearl earrings gleamed like tiny blades. "This is my night," she said in a low, biting voice that was only for me. "You're making a fool of yourself by attending without permission." Not invited. The word no more than a whisper caught in my throat. I made this program, Nora. I coordinated the volunteers and drafted the grants. She interrupted me with the tight, practiced smile that she used to enchant the town. "You helped." "Dear, let's not overstate your contribution. You don't have to tell them about your meager donations. Return home. Later, we will discuss." She moved back to the audience, her graceful shawl flowing behind her like she hadn't just broken me, and I stood there in awe. I staggered outdoors with the quilt still in my arms from when I had taken it from my car, because I needed something familiar to cling onto since the hallway was too narrow and the air was too thick. At the age of 38, I was shaking in the rain after being kicked out of the life I had dedicated my entire being to by the lady I had spent more than 20 years calling family. After my parents passed away when I was 8 years old, Nora served as more than simply my aunt. She was also my anchor and guardian. She had vowed to love me as much as she loved herself, and she had demonstrated to me tonight that I was nothing more than a tool to be thrown away. Her statements alone did not constitute the betrayal. It was the knowledge that I had been taken advantage of my work, stolen my trust, betrayed, and my existence removed from the legacy I had established. I stood in the cold unseen while Nora was inside soaking up the plaudits for her vision and generosity. I wanted to march back in and tell every volunteer and contributor the truth. However, my feet remained immobile. A tiny, unyielding voice said that I was more valuable than her lies, and that despite my lack of knowledge, I could make it through this. My evidence was the quilt with its faded areas and subtle hint of my mother's lavender perfume. I had already been carried through loss by it. It might do so once again. You understand why I stood there immobilized, unable to leave, if you have ever had your heart break under the weight of family members abandoning you. The spark of rebellion beneath the anguish was as much a living thing as the pain itself tearing at my chest. I wasn't yet prepared to concede the victory to Nora. I need to take you back to the beginning in order to explain how I got here standing in the rain, deceived by the lady who reared me. I'm Evelyn Carter, and when I was 8 years old, everything fell apart. All I had was a little suitcase and the patchwork quilt my mother had sewn while she was pregnant when my parents perished in a car accident on a wintry Oregon highway. Each square, such as a fading piece of Dad's favorite flannel, a corner of my infant blanket, or a scrap of Mom's wedding gown, spoke a little something about their narrative. Through the haze of foster homes, that quilt served as my link and a gentle reminder that I had once been cherished. My mother's older sister, Nora Hargrove, took me in when I was 12 years old. She lived in a craftsman cottage with creaking floors and a garden full of lavender and roses in Willow Creek, a small hamlet tucked away in the verdant hills of Oregon. Nora, a 45-year-old single retired schoolteacher with eyes that wrinkled when she smiled and a rapid laugh. After years of being lost, she felt like a secure haven, even though she wasn't my mother. On that first day, Mother placed a dish of warm cornbread in front of me and said, "You're home now, Evelyn." I trusted her. I desired to. It was stable, if not always warm, growing up in Nora's home. She taught me useful skills like kneading dough, repairing a loose doorknob, and managing a budget. She would help me with algebra while we sat at her oak kitchen table, her glasses sliding down her nose. She would tap my forehead and say, "You've got a good head on you." I was motivated to prove that I was worth her effort after hearing the words, "Don't let anyone dim your light." The quilt remained on my bed, serving as a silent reminder of my parents, but Nora's admiration served as my compass. There were still shadows. Leading the library board, planning church potlucks, and always being the first to volunteer, Nora adored being the town's bright spot. She was hailed as a saint by everyone, particularly for adopting poor little Evelyn. However, she would make hurtful remarks at home. She would sigh and stir her tea, saying, "Raising you is no small thing. I sacrificed my peaceful years for you." She would shrug it off, but the words were powerful. After apologizing and promising to make her proud, I started working weekends at the neighborhood cafe at the age of 16 in order to save money for my own school supplies so that I wouldn't be a burden. Her face brightened up like I had given her the moon when I gave her $50 for groceries, even though she had never asked me to. She would give me a hug and remark, "You're my rock." I continued to give because of that. I remained close after turning 18, enrolling in a community college to earn a degree in social work. I had a desire for helping people, so Nora encouraged me to pursue it. I moved into a little studio apartment in town, but I was always at her house, planting her spring tulips, driving her to the doctor, and mowing her grass. She would give me a pat on the cheek and refer to me as her best girl. I believed it was the definition of family: you turned up no matter what, because they had done the same for you. I was 33 when the youth program began 5 years ago. There was nowhere safe for children to go after school in Willow Creek. Too many were fighting or simply lost and aimless. I couldn't help but notice a necessity. I stayed up late writing proposals, looking for grants, and pleading with nearby companies for money. Nora was all in, willing to utilize her connections to secure the space's approval from the community center's board. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "We'll build this together." Her eyes were shining with what I assumed was pride. I was ecstatic as I pictured us working together as partners, changing the world together. However, the fissures became apparent. Nora would interrupt me at board meetings and claim my ideas as her own. She would wave a hand as if I were merely her assistant and remark, "Evelyn's handling the paperwork." She was older and respected, and I didn't give a damn about the credit, so I ignored it. All I wanted was for the children to feel like they belonged. Then came the loans. Nora began requesting funds to pay for program expenses such as $2,000 for a new computer lab and $1,000 for consumables. "Until the grants arrive," she would remark in a gentle, contrite tone. In the belief that I was aiding the children, I took money out of my savings. Despite never repaying me, she would give me a hug and mutter, "How would I manage without you?" That sustained me despite the decline in my bank account. I can see the indications I overlooked when I look back. I believed Nora was treating herself because of the new clothes she wore to board meetings, the expensive coffee maker in her kitchen, and the weekend getaways she took for her health. I also believed that the program was being funded by the grants I had obtained. Since she was family, I had faith in her. Since I was reared by her. Since she had vowed to love the girl as her own, I couldn't fathom her lying to her. It's easy to think someone is greater than they actually are if you've ever loved them so much that you disregarded their warning signs. I believed that's what you do for family, so I gave Nora everything: my time, my money, and my religion. However, as I stood there in the rain holding my mother's quilt, I began to realize that family does not define you. Your light is not stolen by family members and claimed as their own. Like a stone dropped into still water, the truth struck me, causing ripples to spread until everything I believed to be true was upended. The foundation of my faith in Nora was destroyed 3 months ago on a gloomy Willow Creek morning. I was 38 years old and exhausted from balancing the youth program I had created from the ground up with my employment as a social worker. With 100 children attending after school for art classes, tutoring, and a safe space to laugh, the program was a shining example. Even though I was exhausted, I was proud that we had a waiting list and a story in the local newspaper. I was taking the burden alone because Nora had been stepping back, claiming that her health was unstable arthritis, she said. It didn't bother me. It was for the children and the neighborhood that I had come to love. Then I got a call from Clara, a retired accountant who helped at the facility. With a tight voice, as if she were carrying a heavy object, she added, "Evelyn, we need to talk. Come see me at Maine's coffee shop. It has to do with funding for the program." I assumed it might have been a late grant payment, or some other clerical error. The shop smelled strongly like roasted beans when I stepped in, and I saw Clara sitting at a corner table with her hands encircling a mug. Her fingers were shaking as she slid a heavy folder across the table without grinning. She declared, "I audited the accounts." I can't keep it quiet, even though Nora told me to. You must view this. As I opened the folder, my heart fell. Grant reports, donor logs, bank statements, pages of figures that told a story I wasn't prepared to hear. Grants totaling more than $50,000 that I had made for things like paintbrushes, math tutors, and coastal bus excursions had been embezzled into a personal account under Nora's name. They also channeled away donations that I had gathered over the course of weeks from bakeries and hardware businesses. She claimed to have paid herself the $12,000 in loans I had given her, which came from my savings spread over 3 years. The worst part was a document that I signed under false pretenses, removing me from any legal claim and designating Nora as the program's only director. As I read the words blurred and my hands trembled. "This isn't possible," I said. "This is not what she would do." Clara had a calm, gentle, and uncompromising gaze. "Evelyn, she did. There's more. She claims to have designed the program and is marketing it to a national NGO. A $100,000 award is being offered, but only if she manages it. She intends to stop talking to you altogether." The sound of the espresso machine, the clink of spoons, and the conversation all vanished from the coffee shop. I felt as though my lungs had been emptied of breath. Nora, who had reared me and referred to me as her best girl, had taken my money and labor and was destroying the dream I had created. She had stolen not just the money, but also my faith that family held a sacred place in my heart. I had sacrificed everything for her, including my beliefs, my savings, and late evenings spent writing proposals. I was left in the dirt when she used it as a ladder to ascend higher. I don't recall taking the car home. The delicate lavender aroma of my mother's hands permeated the fibers of the quilt when I wrapped it about me while it was on my couch. I tried to figure out how I'd been so blind while I sat there looking at the wall. Each embrace, each "how would I manage without you?" Had everything been a lie, I kept thinking about Nora's trips, her new clothing, and her condescending waves at meetings. I had assumed that the grants were sufficient to support the program and that she was simply making ends meet. On my back, however, she had begun constructing a throne. When I checked my email the following day, the actual knife was there. I was inadvertently copied on a mail sent to the director of the organization by Nora. In her icy and exact words, she noted, "Evelyn's contributions were minimal. She hasn't been trustworthy, therefore I've handled the program by myself." A picture of her at the center grinning with the children with the caption, "Founder and Director Nora Hargrove," was attached. My name was not there. I'm ready to take this to the next level without her. A week prior to her warm embrace and kind words, "You're my rock," I was staring at the screen with the quilt weighing down on my lap when I felt something shatter inside of me. It wasn't just my heart, but the narrative I had given myself about who we were to one another. You understand the gravity of that moment if you have ever looked at someone you love and seen a stranger staring back. It's the disintegration of everything you believed to be true, not just a loss. Nora's promises had given me a place to call home, but now they were gone, leaving me to question whether it had ever existed. However, the quilt I was holding, which was made with my mother's love, muttered that I was more than nothing. No one, not even she, could take away from me what I'd created, something wonderful and true. Following Clara's revelation, the days were thick, confusing, and filled with uncertainty at every turn, much like walking through fog. Going through the motions in my social work profession, making clients smile while my insides rumbled, I was a ghost in my own life. In addition to being a wound, Nora's betrayal served as a mirror, making me realize how much I had sacrificed for someone who had never really seen me. I used to sit on my couch at night, with the quilt over my knees, tracing its stitches, as though they could reveal my identity in her absence. "You're nothing," said the ruthless voice in my thoughts. "She crushed your heart when you put it in her hands. You are not valuable." I no longer frequented the community center. It was too much to bear to think of Nora wearing the crown of my labor and smiling at the children. "You're embarrassing yourself," she said at the fundraiser, And I would lie awake, thinking about it, wondering whether she was correct. Perhaps I had overstated my part. Perhaps I wasn't a creator, but rather an assistant. I considered addressing her, but what would it accomplish? She would twist it, portraying me as the troubled orphan she had kindly raised and ungrateful. Nora the saint who raised her sister's child and created a program for the town's children was adored by Willow Creek. Beside her, I was just Evelyn, the reserved one with her head lowered. I began to picture loading up my car, going somewhere fresh, where no one would be aware of my embarrassment. The quilt's worn yet sturdy patches would make me wonder if my mother would have been upset with me for being so blind. Had I let her down by putting my trust in Nora, I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of my worthlessness. I had been raised to believe that Nora's love was the cornerstone of my life, and that family was a precious relationship. What was I if she could throw me away so readily, a tool, a fool, not a thing? I was on the verge of giving up, allowing her to fade away and win. However, a tiny, obstinate thing prevented me from falling. Clara appeared at my door one wet Saturday with a folded piece of paper and a thermos of chamomile tea. With a soft yet firm gaze, she stated, "I found this in the center's storage." It was hidden in an old program file box. I opened the 3-year-old note and saw my handwriting gazing back at me. Back when we had only a few seats, and a dream I had written this statement to the program's inaugural set of children. "You are sufficient," it said. "Your aspirations are important. You deserve it, so keep being there for yourself. Evelyn." Next to my name, a child had drawn a shaky heart with a red crayon at the bottom. I felt a crack in the darkness as I peered at it, tears clouding my vision. Those were not merely children's words. They were for me. Prior to Nora's lies distorting my truth, I had composed them when I had confidence in myself. Even though she couldn't see it, I was enough. Clara sat with me while I sobbed, allowing me to be myself without pressuring me. The steam curled like a silent prayer as she poured tea. Finally, in a voice as solid as the ground, she added, "You don't have to let her steal your light." Shouting her down isn't the way to win. It entails reclaiming your heart and your work without losing the woman you are. I opened my laptop that evening and got to work. I collected all of the emails, grant applications, and receipts I had saved from the program's inception. I discovered the original proposals. I had written the thank you notes from donors to me and my name on each page. I calmly requested audits from the grant agencies, accompanied by documentation of the monies I had obtained, rather than making allegations. I contacted my lawyer friend Sarah, who assisted me in writing a letter to the Community Center's board, outlining my responsibilities as the program's originator, and requesting an audit of its financial operations. I only wanted the truth to be heard, not praise or retribution. The paperwork wasn't the most difficult aspect. It has to do with my own heart. I had blinded myself to Nora's greed because I had loved her and centered my life on her approval. But I didn't have to believe her falsehoods, since I loved her. I was the woman who wrote that note, who believed in dreams, both mine and others, and I could defend myself and leave. Like a river retracing its path, I sensed a change as I saved the final document, the quilt across my lap. I wasn't nothing. I was Evelyn Carter, and I refused to be defined by Nora. You understand the power of that moment if you have ever been on the verge of losing yourself, only to have a small, real item draw you back. It's peaceful, like the way the ground embraces you when you sit motionless and listen, and neither grand nor loud. My reminder that I had created something genuine, and that no one could take it away from me, was that note with the heart in crayon. No more. The cloud of Nora's betrayal evaporated gradually, like mist burning off under a constant sun, rather than all at once. I had been putting the pieces of the truth together, collecting proof, and quietly requesting justice for weeks. I found myself at a crossroads 3 months after that rainy night outside the community center. I could have demanded that the town see Nora for who she truly was and yelled her lies from rooftops. However, I wasn't that person. I didn't want her embarrassment. I wanted my dignity back. I therefore decided on a course that was as systematic, long-lasting, and grounded in reality as the stitching on my mother's quilt. I was happy that there was no hype surrounding the resolution. The funding organizations I had gotten in touch with, got to work meticulously reviewing the youth program's financial records, leaving little space for Nora's charisma. By late spring, they had blocked her access to the $50,000 she had embezzled and transferred it to the children in the form of art supplies, new computers, and a scholarship for summer camp. The board of the community center convened a confidential meeting after being taken by surprise by their own mistake. I didn't go. To feel complete, I didn't have to stand over them. That night, Clara called me, her voice as cozy as a fireplace. She stated, "They're putting things right." According to a statement from the board, Evelyn, you are the program's originator. The scholarship fund will be called the Evelyn Carter Fund for Youth Dreams in your honor. It had to be you, the children insisted. I let the words sink in while I sat on my couch with the quilt across my lap. The children. Even when Nora hadn't, those intelligent, obstinate individuals I had poured my heart into had noticed me. Something relaxed in my chest, like a knot untying itself, but I didn't cry. The board's remark, a subdued correction to Nora's story, was published in the town newspaper. With her customary composure intact, she resigned from the board shortly after, citing health reasons. I didn't contribute to the rumors that the town was making about her abrupt leave and the mismanagement of the program. Without my help, Nora's reputation began to unravel on its own. There was no criminal case since I didn't press for fraud charges because there wasn't enough proof. For me, justice wasn't about punishing her. It was about taking back what was rightfully mine. I returned to the community center as a volunteer instead of the leader I had been. The children just knew that I had been away and had returned, but they were unaware of the full tale. Their laughter was louder than the pain in my heart as they gave me a hug, as if I had never left. With the help of a little grant I wrote under my own name, I launched a new initiative, a mentorship program for teenagers. It was small, only a few children learning to fix bikes or write poetry, but it was mine. My name couldn't be removed from it, as I rebuilt the quilt, remained on my couch. Its patches, catching the early summer evening light, a silent witness. A month following the board's pronouncement, Nora wrote one email. She wrote, "I never meant to hurt you, Evelyn. In an attempt to be good, I went too far. Can we have a conversation?" I erased it after reading it once. Like dry leaves, her words were lovely until you touched them, at which point they crumbled to nothing. I didn't require her explanations or apologies. I had sought her approval for years, believing it would complete me. I knew better now. The work I did, the people I lifted, and the truth I carried were what made me valuable, not her opinion. I tried something different this Christmas. I threw the kind of dinner party I had always wanted, but never dared to throw in my tiny apartment. Clara arrived with a pan of cornbread and her witty repartee. Shy but honored to be invited, two teenagers from the mentorship program, Javier and Mia, arrived with their parents. The kids cut out paper stars to create a scrappy little tree. We laughed when the garlic bread burnt, and we ate pasta with homemade sauce. The couch was covered by the quilt, which was softly colored in the string lights. My fingertips lingered on a patch from my mother's old apron as I stroked it once, thinking about her with thankfulness rather than sadness. She had provided me with an anchor and evidence that love endures even in the face of tragedy. The quilt served as a map of who I had become, as well as a reminder of what I had suffered. Mia, a shy 15-year-old with a talent for poetry, handed me a folded piece of paper while we were clearing away plates. She murmured, her eyes sliding away, "Read it later." I opened it by myself that evening. It was a brief, unvarnished poem that read, "You see us Windlaum. No one else does, Windtau. Your hands build homes where hearts can rest. Thank you, Ms. Evelyn." In the corner, a tiny heart similar to the one from the old note I had discovered was scribbled in red ink. I put the paper to my chest and started crying, not because I was in agony, but because I didn't realize I was feeling full. I was living, creating something genuine with those who witnessed me, not just getting by. Almost a year after that night in the rain, I ran across Nora one spring afternoon. She was going through mail outside the post office when I saw her strolling through Willow Creek's downtown with a bag of goods in one arm. Her typical Polish had vanished, her shoulders were slumped, and she appeared older. Her expression flashed from surprise to calculating warmth at the sight of me. Her voice was too bright as she stepped closer and said, "Evelyn, what are the chances you look good?" I nodded while avoiding eye contact. "Yes, Nora, I am." Thanks, I said, in a calm, clear voice that wasn't icy. After hesitating, she made another attempt. Well, you know things have been difficult since. Both my health and the program's collapse. I always believed that you and I would resolve our differences. I turned to face the lady who had reared me, molded me, and shattered me. I briefly saw the Nora I had adored, the person who had called me her rock and taught me how to cultivate tulips. However, that Nora was a lie, I had told myself. I've made progress, I stated, using a stern yet gentle tone. My life is mine now, but I wish you well. Expecting more guilt, fury, anything to cling to her smile wavered. I told her the truth and nothing else. The quilt's strength, not its weight, accompanied me as I left. I didn't turn around. Clara and a few neighbors we had become friends with joined us for supper that night, and their voices filled my flat with a warmth I had previously believed only family could provide. They simply shared the meal, the laughs, and the moment, without inquiring about my background or my suffering. I was pouring coffee when I noticed Clara. She remarked, "Evelyn, you're shining." "You see it, but not everyone else does. I'm starting to see it too." I remarked, grinning, as I thought of the quilt Mia's poem and the children who had named a scholarship after me. Know this, if you've ever been deceived by someone you considered family, what they took doesn't define your value. It's in the foundation you create in the small decisions to show up, to be nice, to believe in your own brightness. I am no longer a shadow. My name is Evelyn Carter. I am the custodian of my own tale, which is woven with love rather than duty. When did you rediscover your light? Tell us about it in the comments section below. Give it to someone who needs to know they are enough if this strikes a chord with them.